much longer podcast pause than I anticipated, but we are here to talk today about the power in the pause. Welcome to the Surviving to Thriving podcast that helps women leaders in nonprofits get out of survival mode and thrive in both leadership and life. I'm your host, leadership development coach Kathy Archer, and I help women leaders enjoy impactful leadership. I know that you want to make a difference. I know that you want to have an impact in the sector and the work you do. And you want to have energy and stamina left to enjoy the rest of your life. So in this podcast and in the work I do in my membership site, the Training Library, I help you lead with authenticity, evolve your leadership because it comes from within and it's that personal growth and development that's so critical for leadership, and make the positive impact that you really desire to. So together we can ditch survival mode and learn to thrive in both leadership and life. Now, I had 74 podcast episodes before I took a pause way back a few months ago. Part of what I knew when I took the pause, and I encouraged you to do as well, was take some time for reflection. Take some time to do some of the strategic thinking that we need to do. For me, that evolved around the podcast. Why did I start the podcast? Was it working? Was it doing what I wanted it to? And because I was so caught up in doing the podcast bi-weekly, I didn't have time to step back and think. And I needed to do some of that thinking so that this podcast could be most impactful for you and do what I wanted to do, which is help you evolve in your leadership, be that authentic leader, and create that lasting impact while enjoying your life. And quite frankly, I want this podcast to introduce you to my membership site, the Training Library. And I wasn't sure that it was doing that well. So that's why I took a break. Now, when we left in March and I encouraged you to take a break as well, I'm curious to know if you did it. Did you step back and start to do a little bit of self-reflection? Did you create pockets of time, which is what I encouraged you to do in episode 74, was create little pockets of time, or big pockets if you had the luxury, to do some self-reflection, to do some strategic thinking, to step back and see things in that bigger picture. Did you do it? If so, what did you learn? Today, I'm going to talk about the 5 lessons that I've learned and how you can apply some of these lessons in your life so that we can learn to be better strategic thinkers and create that time to think for ourselves. Then I'm going to tell you about the Training Library, the membership site, so that you know why I'm doing this podcast and what's available to you after you listen to the podcast if you think that you need more. Let's dive into the 5 lessons that I learned by taking a break, because what I learned is there's power in the pause. First lesson I learned, which is probably one we all need to relearn a zillion times, is it takes longer than we think sometimes to do our thinking. So I knew that I was going to take a couple months, maybe 3 months off. I didn't anticipate it to be this long of a break. However, once I started doing some of that strategic thinking, I realized I needed to slow down and do even more thinking, and that this connected to this, and that when I was having this conversation or thinking about this thing, it required a bit more time. This isn't the first time I've learned that lesson, and it certainly isn't going to be the last. Years ago, when I was doing my degree, I did my practicum within our organization, and I reviewed the policy manual. So I literally went from beginning to end of the policy manual and looked at policies and updated them and tidied them up and maybe added some that were missing, deleted some that didn't need to be there. That took way longer than I or our organization anticipated it to. Partly because it wasn't just me doing the work. I could sit down and go, okay, these are the notes that I want to make on this policy, but then I had to get feedback, and everybody that I was getting feedback from was busy. Here's the lesson. It's going to take longer than we think. So estimate how much time you think it's going to take, and then times it by about 1.25 at least. Then that's more realistic about the time it's going to take. So when you think that you have something to do, especially strategic thinking, try a big project, strategic thinking, make sure that you're giving yourself enough time and then giving yourself an extra buffer. The second lesson that I learned was that by taking this pause, this powerful pause, remember there's power in the pause, I started to renew and recharge. Now, part of that was taking some time off as well, but just even in changing the work, they say a change is as good as a rest. changing the work that I was doing allowed my brain, my thoughts, just the way I was working to recharge and reignite my excitement and my passion and my enthusiasm for the work. And so by stepping back and pausing, the powerful lesson that I learned was that it's important to do this at times, not just keep doing the same thing all the time, but stepping back to think gave me time to recharge and renew. And so what I would encourage you to do is look at your calendar. And yes, we need to insert holidays and breaks and time off. But I also want you to create this space for thinking that is also going to recharge and renew you. Think about how powerful it is when you step back and do something different, when you change your day-to-day activities or your week to monthly activities so that you're doing something a little bit different. It's like when we get a new job or, we start a new activity, there's a little bit of excitement and energy in it. So when you shift your schedule, when you change what you're doing, even briefly, that gives you that renewal. So the power in the pause is pause the day-to-day, the normal routine, and give yourself a bit different routine to renew and recharge. The third lesson that I learned in taking this pause was how important it is to think differently. When I'm creating podcasts, I'm creating content all of the time, and I'm thinking in this sort of box, 3 ways to do this, the 10 tips here. I'm often giving you a formula or something that you're going to take and apply really quickly. Now, when I stepped back and started to look at how does this podcast fit with this transition to encourage you, to invite you, to teach you, to show you what's available in my membership site, I started to think really differently. And it was like connecting this dot and this dot and this dot. And how does this path work from here to there? If you're listening to the podcast, maybe for the first time ever, and you're like, oh, who is this Kathy? And why, sounds interesting. Maybe I want to learn more. And you head over to my website and you're like, oh, this is interesting, but it doesn't match what's in the podcast. Like that's a whole different conversation. It's like, I'm not sure what she does. But if what I'm saying on the podcast is encouraging you to develop yourself, to grow yourself, to do that work, take responsibility for your growth and development, you land on my website and I'm like, here's how you can create your personal curriculum so that you can be a more confident leader. And you're like, oh, that's interesting. And then I encourage you to sign up for my monthly newsletter or my weekly newsletter. And you're like, oh, every week she's giving me new tips. That path helps you go, oh, I'm starting to understand my challenge, how Kathy can help me, and how this is going to lead me to be a better leader. But I needed to sort of see all of those dots, connect all of those dots. When you're head down doing the work, you're not seeing those dots because you're not thinking that way. And so slowing down, giving yourself space. So one of the things that I realized is I'm busy, calls, teaching, training, writing, whatever I'm doing. And I'm doing stuff in chunks of maybe an hour, 45 minutes. I can get lots done. I can, draft the blog, and the next 45 minutes I can edit the blog. But when I give myself 4 hours or 8 hours, my brain starts to process and think differently. It's not constrained in this little 45-minute box. I don't have those constraints. And when I break the barrier of that box, I'm able to think a lot differently. What I realized in this powerful pause that I took was I need to create those bigger containers for thinking. I love, get her done, get your emails done, set a timer for 15 minutes, get through as many emails as you can. But that's not always the kind of thinking we need. When we need this kind of thinking, we need to create a different kind of container for that. So the lesson here for you to take away is create those powerful pauses that are sometimes longer. Sometimes we need those short little ones, but other times we need those longer ones and maybe a different location where we're stepping away and not feeling that constraint so that we're only like opening up a little bit or thinking a little bit, that we're giving ourselves the freedom of space and time to really create that space and time to think differently. Lesson number 4 in creating these powerful pauses was I don't always think well by myself. Sometimes I do, and it's great, but I needed help to do this strategic thinking. And so there were different people over the course of the last few months that I've hired or talked to or worked with to help me do this kind of thinking. So for example, when I was working on updating my website copy, I hired somebody to help me talk it through, and we would get on Zoom calls, and we would be, typing the language on my website and try this word, and we'd go back and forth, and then we'd pause for a week or two, and we'd come back and look at it again. Having somebody to talk out loud with helped me think differently. If I'm just confined in my own head, it's not going to work the same way. And then I needed different kinds of people. So, I had a coach at one point. I had somebody helping me with marketing at one point. I had somebody helping with the visuals at another point. The point is, there are lots of different people who can help you think. And the powerful lesson here in this powerful pause is don't be afraid to ask for help. Reach out and ask for people to help you think, and look for different types of thinkers, different ways of thinking, and be open to it. Create those opportunities for engagement where you're thinking differently and somebody's helping pull ideas out of you. That powerful pause from the regular work and shifting into somebody helping you think differently is going to create immense value for you in this strategic thinking process. The fifth lesson that I learned, and I so hope you take this one away, is that by taking that pause, doing that renewal, thinking differently, having people talk to me and me have engaged in those conversations, reignited a lot of the passion that I have for the work I do. And this, there are days where you just wonder why you're doing this, and it just feels like such a slog. And quite frankly, that sucks. It's sucking the life out of you. It's sucking the energy out of you. It's not helping you do your best work. The power in this pause is that it gives you time to reconnect to why this work matters and why you do this work and why you're committed to this work. It reignites that energy and that enthusiasm in you to go, yeah, I get it. Some days are hard, but it's worth it. Or there's a reason why I'm saying no to this, or taking this pause, or learning this thing, or hiring this person, or whatever it is you're doing, because you're connected to that passion and purpose. But we lose sight of that at times. And so the real power in the pause is that you are reconnecting to what's important to you and why that's important. So remember, often pauses take longer than we think. Give yourself some buffer space, like at least 1.25 what you think you need. That space, when you create it, will create that powerful rest and renewal that will give you some of that energy back for doing your day-to-day work. There are different kinds of thinking, and you need to create containers, big containers, different containers, outside containers, off-site containers to think differently. And when you do that, you'll start to create a different way of thinking and thus a different result. Sometimes we need people to help us think. Don't be afraid to ask for that help. And the biggest one, when you take a break, the power in that pause is that it renews and recharges and excites you and energizes you. Just a quick pause to tell you that I have a free guide sheet that can help you take pauses, learn how to take more effective pauses, and learn how to use pauses to really change not only who you are and how you lead, but the impact you have. I'm going to put the link in the notes, but it is 5 books on pausing. It is apps that can help you pause. It also includes a little snippet from my book, Mastering Confidence. You're going to learn not just why pause is important, but how to create those pauses in your workday and in your life. So after several months of pausing the podcast, what's been the powerful lesson for me? The powerful lesson for me is realizing that I haven't been completely honest with you. I haven't helped you understand what I do beyond the podcast and how it can help you be an authentic leader, evolve your leadership, and really make that impact you desire while still having time for the rest of your life. See, here's the thing. I know that nonprofits are notorious for having a low budget for training, no time to help you learn and grow as a leader. You've moved into the position likely from frontline, so you haven't had a lot of training and growth. What you have had maybe has been piecemeal, but you haven't had the ongoing personal and professional development to help you excel in leadership, enjoy leadership, and feel confident in your leadership. Which is why I created a library of courses for you with oodles of worksheets and self-reflective exercises that are on demand when you need them. Imagine getting the leadership training you need when you need it. Being able to hop onto your computer, have a leadership coach like me, in your ear saying, do this, try this, here's the worksheet worksheet. Here's the formula. Here's the plan. These are the steps to take. Here's some things to take into consideration. Learn these skills. How about having that when you need it? That's what the training library is. Inside of the training library are things to help you manage your team, like how do you do supervision meetings? Manage your priorities, like how do I prioritize my workload? Manage yourself, like what are my values and am I honoring my values? Managing your emotions, learning that emotional control to help you stay composed when you get triggered. Managing your confidence, because let's face it, leadership is tough. We get knocked down all the time. And so how do you have that ongoing confidence to do the work you need to do? And then managing your career. Perhaps you've just moved into a team lead position or a coordinator position and you want to advance, or maybe you're in a ED position and it's time to transition out. Or maybe you just want to continue to grow and develop your leadership skills and stay in the same position you're in. But how do you advance your career? How do you grow yourself? All of that is included in the training library. And what's more, once a month, I hop onto a Zoom call with you and everybody else in the training library who wants to join. And you get to ask me questions. You get coaching from me. You get to connect with other leaders and go, oh my God, how do you do this? How are you managing this? And you get to connect with people who understand, who get it, and maybe have some solutions, or maybe just offer a listening ear. All of that is part of the training library. My promise to you as we continue to podcast and I continue to give you ideas and suggestions and interviews is that I also connect that to whatever's inside the training library that might be relevant. If I'm interviewing somebody on confidence, I'll tell you what's inside the training library in terms of courses that can help you develop your confidence, or a worksheet that you might be able to do. So you know if, and maybe not, but if there's more value for you, where to go to get it, how to learn those things that you need to learn, how to evolve your leadership, how to be that authentic leader, how to find that balance and enjoyment again. All of that is so, so important to you. I was there once. My job sucked. I did not want to be there. I was grinding away at it. People were not happy with me. Things were falling apart in my personal life. And that didn't feel so good. And so what I did was I created my own personal and professional curriculum. I figured out what I needed to learn. What is integrity? How do I be a leader who leads with integrity? I learned how to balance and create some of the work-life balance strategies and the wellness strategies. But I created my own curriculum and I learned those things. We can't wait for somebody else to do this for you in the nonprofit world. We just don't have access to those resources. Nobody's got time. Crisis-driven field we're in. Often our boss or our board doesn't know either. You have to take responsibility for your personal and professional development. And inside the training library are the tools you need to do that. So if you want to know more, kathyarcher.com/library. And I invite you to become a member if you think it fits. Imagine getting the training you need when you need it. That's what's inside the training library. And the training library is a perfect example of a pause and the power in the pause. When you pause to go watch a video, do a worksheet, engage with some of your peers, that's when you start to really reconnect with why you do this work, how you do this work, develop some of those skills you need. And that's, my dear, what's going to move you from surviving to thriving in both your leadership and life. Go make the rest of your day awesome, my dear. If you found today's episode helpful, then you are going to love the training library. Many women leaders in nonprofits wish that they had a coach or a mentor to help them, but they don't believe that they or their organization can afford it. Oh, but you can. Inside of the Training Library membership site, you will not only get access to affordable and easily accessible ongoing personal and professional development training, you will also have access to a leadership coach at your fingertips. That way, when you hit those inevitable challenges that leadership will bring your way, you'll have both the resources and the support to navigate your way through them with confidence, composure, and while keeping your integrity intact. To find out more, head to kathyarcher.com/library. If you are enjoying the show, I'd love it if you could leave me a comment or a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thanks for listening. Go make the rest of your day awesome.